Hey folks, I'm Sir Vainglory, and this is Anatomy of a Battle number 18, and this time it's a battle between the 15th Infantry Division and the 716th Infanterie Division on the Coat 112 map, and this is an absolute mauling. I think it's one of the worst battles I think I've ever fought. I just want to get your expectation levels set right at the start. So we've fought in this map a couple of times, and I thought this time I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to push on the right, I'm just going to try and hold on the right and advance more through the centre and the left. So no fancy plans, just a general push forward. And I think one of the earlier battles, also with the 15th Infantry on this map, pushed along a central plateau up to the crossroads. So I had something vaguely like that in mind this time, but I had no definite plans. And that was a big part of the problem, to be honest. If you don't have objectives, then you don't know what sort of troops you need to be able to achieve those objectives. So, off to a bad start right away. So, the force I started with this time, it was almost completely infantry, with a few recce sections and a couple of mortars. And it was all split out sort of fairly evenly across the map. On the left hand side, I sent 3 rifle squads forward with 2 recce sections. One of the recce sections would go to the high ground to keep an eye on the hilltop and the ground below. The second would head along the main road to give me vision of the centre, and the rifle squads would advance across the ground between the 2 recce sections once I'd brought an AVRE in to provide support. I sent 3 rifle squads in the recce section to the right flank with a mortar for support, and the intention is to move the infantry cross country to the tree line and set up a defensive position. So order the infantry to dismount just beyond the village, and we'll have them advance on foot from there. I don't want the recce carrier to be exposed to any sort of long range armour piercing fire, so I'll pull it off the road and have it move up behind cover of the trees. But as it approaches the trees, it's taken out by German anti-tank team's Panzerschreck, and the recce section goes up with it. In the centre, I have eyes on German units by the crossroads, and they seem to be staying pretty far back. I'd spotted a transport advancing on the road to the right and ordered my mortar to fire on it, but I'd forgotten how limited a range the 2-inch mortar has, so it drove off to immediately follow orders and fired in the transport's last known position. And the only German unit I'd spotted so far on the left flank was an anti-tank gun that was again well back, so I've risked pushing my infantry further forward from the hedgerow I'd had them in initially. And at the moment it looks like I've got good control of the left and centre of the map, while the German seems to be pushing more on the right, where I spotted the single transport moving earlier. Down on the right flank, my rifle squads had taken up their jumping off positions when the Germans advanced. The Germans had a couple of Osttroppen squads in the leader section, which my troops were able to engage in the open. The Osttroppen open up to provide supporting fire, and the leader section begins to fall back. But I want to try to eliminate the leader section first to make the infantry easier to deal with, so I have my mortar target the leader. But the Germans have artillery support of their own with an Infantry Geschütze 18 field gun, and the IG-18 suppresses one of my rifle squads with just 2 rounds, and suppresses the second squad with its third. And with those squads suppressed, the German infantry takes the chance to advance again. With the leader section out of sight, I have my mortar target one of the Osttroppen squads, and my rifle squads recover their morale and engage the German infantry, causing them to halt and return fire. Over on the left, my rifle squads have advanced and taken what cover they could find, and they watch the German anti-tank gun as it comes towards them. They fire on it as soon as it's in range and it pulls back, but another Infantry Geschütze 18 then appears on the hilltop and begins shelling my infantry sporadically. I started pushing my infantry in the centre forward through the trees with the Dingo command car in support, and I pulled my mortar back into a more sensible position. An Infantry Geschütze 18 started firing on my recce carrier though, so I pulled it back to try and get it out of range. But as the carrier falls back, it comes under fire from what looks to be a Flak 41, and the combined fire forces the carrier to fall back, and it's eventually destroyed by a high explosive round from the IG-18. On the right, the leader section reappears, and the IG-18 fires again on my infantry, suppressing them. 2 rifle squads have been pinned by the German infantry and the field gun, and they're being slowly destroyed. My 3rd squad engages a KFZ-70, which unloads a Fusilier squad. I had brought up a fresh recce section of my own, and the recce carrier engages the Fusiliers. But with the IG-18 out of range of my mortar, it's once again targeting the leader section. But with all my infantry now pinned down, the outlook isn't good. I really need support from tanks or heavy weapons here if I have to have any chance. Up on the hill on the left flank, the IG-18 there has fired and pinned down each of my rifle squads, and the Avra I'd brought in to support them is only now arriving in the vicinity quite far back. An MG34 then opens up on my infantry from the top of the hill, and they're clearly in real trouble already. I had ordered my mortar carrier in the centre to move further up, but it strays into range of the IG-18 and worse into line of sight of the Flak 41, which sends it into retreat. I'd hoped that my infantry would be able to advance under cover of the trees and hedges, but they must have been spotted by the German Fusilier squad, and the Flak 41 opens up on them. The squad that had tried moving along the hedgerow had no chance and was pinned by the AA gun. My recce section had also been spotted, and fire from the Fusilier squad, an STKFZ-7 and the IG-18 took care of them. So even at this early stage I can see that I'm already losing the battle. I've got no response to the ranged artillery and machine gun fire that's shredding my infantry in the centre, and while my troops on the right are just about matching the Germans in combat, they've become isolated. The IG-18 has wiped one of the squads out, but the recce carrier has managed to force the German Fusiliers to fall back, so it seems to be a stalemate, but then a second IG-18 appears in the tree line and tips the balance of power firmly in the Germans' favour. Over on the left, one of my rifle squads is wiped out, and my Avra still isn't in a position to provide support. It also looks like something's pushed forward on top of the hill, but I don't have sight of it yet. I eventually see that it's an Osttroppen squad moving towards the trees near my recce carrier. But at this point I'm spending too much time trying to save infantry that's already a lost cause, and still haven't given orders to my Avra, which might have been able to save some of them. My mortar in the centre had recovered its morale, and I ordered it to move up so I could lay smoke to cover the rifle squad that was pinned down. But the mortar again moved into line of sight of the Flak 41, and this time was destroyed. And the Flak 41 and STKFZ-7 then pound away on my pinned rifle squad, and as we get the unwelcome sight of German armour approaching in the distance. Up on the hill I ordered my recce section and carrier to engage the Osttroppen squad on the left flank and finally send my Avra forward. But I only have one squad with 3 men left now, so it's a pointless exercise and will just put the Avra at risk. And despite everything, my troops down on the right have managed to keep the German infantry pinned down and prevent an advance, but they now add an MG34 to the mix. My rifle squad eventually kills off the leader section, but if I don't get some support in here it's only a matter of time until my infantry buckles under the weight of fire. The last of my rifle squad that was pinned in the centre had finally been killed off by a shell from the IG-18, and as the German Fusiliers advance, my other squad opens up on them, revealing its position. They are then treated to a hail of fire from 2 anti-aircraft guns, the IG-18 and the Fusilier squad, and are half destroyed before they go to ground. The Osttroppen squad in the hill has been wiped out, but the IG-18 there and the MG34 are now causing problems for my recce units. The Avra is under fire from a Panzer 35S, and I should really be pulling it back to a defensive position instead of pointlessly pushing it into a pocket where it can be hit by the Panzer and 2 IG-18s. The IG-18 up in the hill has now moved into position to get line of sight on my command car and begin shelling it. My rifle squad is then dumb enough to stick its head up and is blasted with fire again. The IG-18 sends my dingo into retreat, and the massed fire wipes out my rifle squad. And the dingo is then destroyed by the field gun, and like on the right, it's only a matter of time before my front line here crumbles. The IG-18 up in the hill then forces my recce carrier to fall back, and keeps up the fire on it as it retreats and it manages to destroy it. And at the same time, the Avra's morale breaks and it begins to fall back. Over on the right, one of the Austrooping squads begins to advance while the IG-18 and MG-34 keep my rifle squads suppressed. They then target the recce section and it's eventually destroyed by the IG-18. The German infantry and MG then fire on my rifle squads again, and the IG-18s target the recce carrier that had moved forward to provide fire support, and it's taken out. And the Austrooping squad and the Fusiliers start pushing forward again, and my mortar targets the Fusiliers. But one of my rifle squads surrenders, and the second comes under concentrated fire from the infantry and MG-34. So even having lost the leader section, the support from the field guns and MG made sure that the Austrooping outmatched my infantry, and when the second rifle squad surrenders, my mortar is left isolated. My remaining rifle squad in the centre has now been discovered and subjected to the same rain of fire as its predecessor, and like last time it's half destroyed before it goes to ground. And to the left, my Avri has now been fired on by the two IG-18s in addition to the Panzer 35. It's hit time after time and is in headlong retreat without having fired a shot of its own or having provided any sort of support to my doomed infantry. I've brought in a couple of rifle squads and a Honey Stewart to try to secure the right flank, and as the Germans have also made the breakthrough in the centre, I've sent a Churchill 4 to a position where it can help deal with both threats, hopefully. I don't know why I didn't give my infantry return fire only orders, but it was definitely a major flaw in my game and contributed to a lot of them being wiped out. On the right, my tank support arrives too late, and when I called the Honey Stewart in, I'd ordered it to deploy by the village in support of the infantry, but I obviously don't want it there any longer, so I pull it back slightly. I also have some recce troops and infantry moving up. My Honey Stewart and the mortar get glimpses of German infantry advancing through the village, and they take out the remains of an Austrooping squad, but the anti-tank armed Fusilier squad is getting dangerously close to my tank. I have a second Honey Stewart coming in, and I begin pulling the mortar back towards the tanks to give me massed machine gun fire. But the Fusiliers appear in one of the buildings, and they're immediately engaged by both tanks. The German commander pulls them back to the other building to prevent them from being pinned down. So I've stabilised the right flank for now, but the left and centre are wide open. My infantry in the centre was eventually wiped out, so I had a recce section hurry over from the right to get me vision on what the Germans are doing. And the Churchill 4 I'd brought in holds position out of sight of the Flak 41 and fires on an infantry squad. Down in the village, my tanks have now engaged an Austrooping squad at close range, while my rifle squad is fired on by the MG-34. My infantry become pinned quickly, which is a problem because one of the IG-18s is now also firing on them. In the village, the Austrooping squad is eliminated, and one of the Honeys then takes out the machine gun. I've sent a rifle squad to try to deal with the IG-18 with support from a mortar, and they do manage to suppress the field gun, but German infantry up in the trees is able to pin down my infantry. I'd called in a Typhoon to attack the IG-18 on the hill on the left flank, and it took fire, but it did get its attack in, and it was able to pin down the field gun. My Churchill then spotted an MG-34 moving in the open in the centre and was able to destroy that. As it moved up, it then spotted an IG-18 in the trees, and they engaged each other. The German tanks over in the road then spotted my recce section and fired on that, while my Churchill managed to pin the IG-18. And the Churchill then began moving forward again when it was attacked by an anti-tank team, but it survived and it was able to destroy them. I had spotted reinforcements coming in along the road on the right and sent my Honey Stewarts to engage them, but I'd forgotten about the Fusiliers with their HHL-3 and they took out one of the tanks. The remaining tank fired on the infantry, pinning it, but an anti-tank team then appeared in a building and took out my mortar with its Panzerschreck. So I pulled my surviving tank back towards safety and moved my rifle squad over to give it some protection, but I didn't move it far enough and it fell to another Panzerschreck round. And my rifle squad is then pinned by fire from German infantry in the trees, and my entire right flank crumbles once more. On the left, my Avre is now being fired on by a Pak 37, which has already forced a Honey Stewart I'd brought in to fall back. And one of the most embarrassing things in this battle is seeing a supply truck driving to the front line along a main road in complete safety. The Honey Stewart though is moving forward again, and I tried to get it into cover of the tree line, but the Pak 37 spots it and kills it. And so without that tank support, the infantry is left vulnerable to machine gun fire from the hilltop again.
Don't shoot. Just get me out of here.
Back on the right, the German infantry in the village now pushes forward, and after a brief firefight, my rifle squad surrenders.
Get me out of here.
So due to poor decision making and lack of control, the Germans have successfully chewed up everything I've brought in, and the situation for me is dire. My Churchill had managed to destroy the IG-18 in the centre, so I suspect that the German will be moving his Flak 41 into that tree line to return the favour, and I pull my tank back to get into cover. It takes a shot from a German tank as it repositions, but it survives. Just drop it down the hill behind the trees there. On the left, the MG34 up in the hill has pinned one of my rifle squads, and an IG-18 then gets into range and begins firing on it as well. By now I've lost any sort of command and control, demonstrated by the fact that my Avre has recovered morale but has been sitting idle. I eventually give the Avre orders, and it moves up onto the plateau to provide support to the infantry, and it's immediately fired on by the IG-18. I'd brought in a rifle section that was intended to provide some protection for the Churchill, but it's spotted by a German tank when it arrived and destroyed before it could even dismount from its truck. On the right, I'm moving my latest reinforcements into defensive positions and plan to build up a force to launch a counterattack. I've positioned the Churchill behind the screen of trees on the ridge, from where it can provide overwatch fire on any enemy units that move forward. I've moved up a recce section and have it move forward, and its heavy machine gun jeep provides covering fire on the German infantry, but a good old IG-18 fires on it and destroys it. The Churchill manages to suppress the infantry though, and it eventually falls back, and my squad that's behind enemy lines continues to occupy some of the Germans, which keeps the pressure off my reinforcements from now.
Contact with hostiles.
And finally, about 8 or 9 minutes after being called in, my Avre finally engages an enemy unit and is able to take out the IG-18. This is bittersweet though, because it meant that the counter battery fire I'd just called in from a 25 pounder was redundant. Would have been better used somewhere else. But the German units continue to move forward, with the SMG on the hill and the Panzer 35 pushing the front line, and I've only got limited vision of them. I have my Avre in a really poor position, as it's unable to engage the German units because of the trees, while they're in a position to fire on my infantry from safety. I should have had the Avre move more to the left into an effective position to cover the road and the hilltop.
We can't take this anymore.
At least I had my 25 pounder change target.
Contact with hostiles.
So you can see the gaping hole now in the centre. None of my units have line of sight on that plateau at all, and I'm lucky I'm not up against a fast moving panzer division, or it would be pouring through that and enveloping my flanks. So I felt I was in a bit of a panic, and I brought in a recce section and a jeep to try and get an idea of what the Germans now had in the centre, but it's engaged by German tanks and the Flak 41 as it moves up. The recce section manages to bail out, but when the jeep begins to retreat, it's hit and blown up. I'd also been bringing in a column of infantry behind that, and as it rushes into the centre, it's fired on by the tanks and the anti-aircraft gun, and with one squad being pinned immediately and another destroyed in its truck. One of the trucks did manage to get a bit further though, but the hit came under fire from a Fusilier squad in the hill, and then the artillery targeted it, and it was pinned down and almost obliterated straight away. Flak 41 making their life miserable and short. The Churchill 4 that I'd brought in to support that infantry finally trundled up, and a Typhoon that I'd also brought in aborted its mission after taking fire from 2 Flak 41s. On the right, the Churchill continues to hold back most of the German infantry, but a lone soldier is able to push forward into the village. With the tank doing such good work, I think I might have an opportunity here to start pushing my rifle squads forward, clearly not having learned my lesson about unsupported infantry advancing. One of my squads spots the lone German and engages him in the building, but the IG-18 has line of sight on my troops and it pins them down. And my other squad is moving forward through the orchard when it's spotted and has its day ruined by a Flak 41. The Churchill keeps up the fire in the German infantry, but the IG-18 and Flak 41 have already removed any real chance of me counterattacking on the right flank. I'd thrown away my troops without having sufficient weight of force to achieve anything there. The two Panzer 35s in the centre are keeping my infantry pinned down in the open. I have a 25 pounder that I brought in firing on the tanks, but what I really needed was a smoke screen to give my squads relief and a chance to get to cover. The Panzers then engaged my Churchill, and the combination of fire from my tank and the 25 pounder began to suppress one of the Panzers, but the Flak 41 then fires on the Churchill and it has to fall back. The Flak 41 and one Panzer then fire on my infantry again, suppressing a couple of the squads, but one squad and the leader are able to head for cover in the trees, while the 25 pounder continues to try to suppress the vehicles. I'd been trying to bring the Avri on the hill over to support the centre, but it moves into line of sight of the Flak 41 and is destroyed. A rear shot from an 88mm. And over on the right, the IG-18 had destroyed one rifle squad, but the Flak 41 had ceased firing on the other one. With my Churchill having taken out a German infantry squad, my rifles pushed on towards covering a building ahead of them. But the Germans advanced at the same time, and my rifle squad was engaged by a leader section and the IG-18, and it was quickly pinned down before it was able to get into cover. At the same time, the Flak 41 opened up in my Churchill on the hill and brewed it up, so that was probably the most effective unit of the game gone. And the infantry, the IG-18 and an SD KFZ-7 then laid into my rifle squad and recce section, taking them out just as my latest reinforcements began to arrive. In the centre, the Churchill starts moving forward again, and as soon as it's in line of sight, it's engaged by the Panzers and the Flak 41, and it doesn't survive long. So once again, my left flank and centre have been laid open, and I'm certain that there will be swarms of German units pushing forward there. I've been really poor at countering his ranged weapons and have pointlessly wasted so much of my infantry. Down on the right, I've got two rifle squads safely into buildings, but as my Churchill 4s move up, they're targeted by the Flak 41. The tanks survive the first shot, but one of them stops and tries to take cover. The Flak 41 reloads and fires again, killing that tank, and then it reloads a second time and shoots, and that eliminates my armoured support for this flank. And switching to the neutral view shows how completely overrun I've been, and this was all achieved without any use of German air power or off-map artillery. He used his heavy weapons, tanks and infantry really well together, and I used mine very poorly, and also made very poor use of the aircraft. So overall, a terrible performance from me in this battle, and I surrendered. Anyway, I hope you found this entertaining. I have to say I was cringing while I was watching it, and I should point out though that I fought this battle before the one I fought in the last video with the 16th Luftwaffen Division, so I can at least say that my lessons were learned from this battle. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a comment and rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content, and I hope to see you again next time. Cheers.